Welcome. My name is David F. Wilson and you're listening to Dust, David's Ultimate Stone Talk. Today I'm joined by a kind of early career craftsman, Mark Ricard from Canada. So hi there, Mark. How are you doing?
Hi, David. Good morning.
Yeah, it's early afternoon here for me. So we've been busy recently?
I'm always busy, always busy. Yeah, there's too much work, not
Yeah.
enough hands.
That's good to hear. Good to hear. Well, just for the listener, kind of give a sort of general outline of where you are in the world.
I live on the top of Lake Ontario in a little town called Port Hope, and it's about an hour away from Toronto most days if you don't get too bad of traffic. And it's a small little old town. It's beautiful, really, and there's lots of stonework here, thanks to my mentor, John Shaw Rimmington. The town has a lot of stonework, so it's nice to see that around. Um,
And have you always
and
been in Port Hope?
I've been in Port Hope just the last year, but I was local. I was in the next town over for about 7, 8 years previous to that. And before that, I was about a half an hour west towards Toronto. I was born in Oshawa. They used to make cars, and they're making cars again there. My dad grew up making cars for General Motors. So, and that's in Oshawa, which is just a little bit away, and it's a beautiful little town as well. It has lots of stories, and people like to make fun of it, but it was a great place to grow up, and I'm not too far from where I grew up, really, which is nice.
And give a kind of just a quick sort of summary of what your connection is to the stone world.
My connection to the stone world is that I am a mason, John Shaw Rimmington's right-hand man, I guess you could say, here in Port Hope, and I follow him around on his adventures, which leads me some crazy places, and I get to work with some great people. And I met John about 8 years ago, and he's definitely changed my life, and stone has definitely helped him change my life. And I have enjoyed the last 7, 8 years working for someone like John. That's exceptional, exceptional kind of place to start in the stone world. But I have enjoyed the simple aspects of my work in stone, and I'm just so grateful to have collided with stone and being carried along with it now, and it takes me to places I could never imagine any other occupation taking me.
It's a kind of
As you
familiar,
know.
yeah, yeah, as I do. It's a kind of familiar story. This is the kind of, having the chat with you today is the kind of the sort of third leg in a kind of little kind of mini series of Dust, and where I've been kind of speaking to people who are kind of not far into their journey of their stone career. First off was Barney Murray, who was a DSWA bursary recipient, and he's kind of setting off on his journey. And then Alex Zafiropoulos, who has kind of, through a change in location in his life, has kind of stumbled upon the craft. And again, he's kind of quite early in their career. So I think it's quite an interesting contrast to learn each of your stories and see the sort of how you've all arrived at it, and you're all getting something really amazing from it. But you've all kind of got slightly different entries into it, and how that's kind of resulting in different kind of attitudes to the craft. And I think that's going to be interesting to kind of to hear, further about that. And so you kind of, gave me a kind of a quick summary of where you grew up. If you could perhaps tell me a little bit more of your childhood and your background.
I grew up in a manufacturing town, an automotive town, and you kind of grew up wanting to work at one of three places because it had good wages and good benefits, and you were set for life, and you could have the things that you wanted. And that was what was on the postcard as when you grow up in a manufacturing town. And I did my best to emulate that, and I got to work in the plant, the car plant, in the summer, and I had some really cool jobs, and I had good pay, and I was a summer student, so I knew I could leave at the end of the summer. It wasn't forever, but very quickly I realized that it wasn't for me, and I didn't like the politics of it, and just the monotony of it. And I knew my personality really, I could do it, but I didn't think I'd like doing it. So luckily I went. Sorry, go ahead.
So you weren't very academic then. You didn't did you stick in at school? And
I was middle of the road in school. I wasn't if there was something I liked, I did well, and the rest I was lucky to get a C on my report card, and that was fine. I was happy with that. My sisters were a little more academic than I was, but I was a little more hands-on. I realized that very early, that I needed to be hands-on, and working outside is a huge bonus, but I definitely knew that I needed to work with my hands.
was there a kind of technical education at that time in Canada?
Yeah, I went to a high school that had tons and tons of shops. So I took credit after credit of automotive and sheet metal and welding and of drafting. I got like 7 drafting credits, and it was a really great high school. And I walked, a little farther to get there, an extra half an hour in the morning, but it was worth it because they had a theater and a great art program, and like I said, all these shops. So I came out of high school with a love for technical aptitude, and mixing that with hands-on and understanding how machines work. And I really enjoyed it. I was happy to. I had a pretty good high school years because of that. I think all the rest of it was pretty normal. Getting bullied didn't really, fit in, but I really enjoyed the fact that I could work with my hands and work those skills.
Yeah, that was definitely the kind of the subjects that kind of attracted me. I was quite good at technical drawing, and spent more time in the workshop and in the art class, especially kind of as you move towards 4th and 5th year. Is what as you're kind of sort of 16 and 17, I used to kind of just head towards the art class, and they would just allow me to sit there for hours. So yeah, it was good.
Hang out.
Yeah. So after school, where did you go there? Did you go into further education?
Yeah, it reads a bit like an occupational manual. I went back to school 3 times post-secondary. The first time I went back for, it was a little trade certificate. So I went to a college, a trades college in Oshawa called Durham, and they had a pre-trade certificate. So I went in there and I took 7 courses, and one of them was oil and gas heating, sheet metal again, house wiring, plumbing, steam fitting, basically anything pipe fitter or plumber, what you would want some kid to have when he was done to come into a business. So I knew that I wanted to get into a trade even then, right after high school. So I tried, but at that point, there was a big recession on, and they were laying off journeymen, laying off 4th year apprentices. So it was really hard. But luckily, I had a great job in the summer, making lots of money at the car plant, and I had a job in retail at a grocery store, making good money. So I said, let's just go back to school. I kept going back to school, even though instead of waiting around for a pipe fitter job to come up. So the second thing I went back to school for was legal administration. 3 years of law clerk, basically, schooling. And that was pretty dry, and
Did you respond
legal.
well to that?
In a way, I think my personality gelled with the order of it, and the practicality of legal documents, and the purpose. It has purpose. So it had a okay side, but it really, I didn't think it was what I was looking for. It was a lot of I had placements in Toronto for the corporate branch, and I had to stand there with these envelopes full of corporate documents to get them registered. So it was like you have a lot of time to think about what you're doing with your life when you're waiting to submit legal documents.
Shirt and tie job then, was it?
Oh yeah, and dress shoes running around downtown Toronto. It was not. It was fun though. I learned a lot.
Sets you up for
So
life at Diking.
yeah, exactly. Make you realize what you have once you find it. And then I went back to school again for computers, because that was the thing to do at the time. And I wasn't going to move to Toronto to get a legal job. So I was making good money at these other jobs. So I decided to go back for computers, which I have. I received my software, hardware, and network certifications. So I actually had an industry certificate that could help me get a job, and it did, and I got a really cool job removing viruses over the phone on headset while staring at the ceiling.
If you give me £50, Mrs.
Yeah, exactly. Can you tell me if your screen is on? Yeah. What does the screen say? Have you turned it on? Yeah, it was fun. It's like performing surgery, with audio
remotely.
only. Yeah. So that was fun, and that was right around when my daughters were being born. And unfortunately, the company clawed itself back into the States to do more of its support, US-based support, instead of using Canada. And I had to make the decision to take a job closer to home, and I didn't want to have all that anxiety of not knowing where things were going.
So what sort of age? Sorry, what sort of age were you now?
I was probably in my early 30s. I had, my daughters were born around 29. So yeah, probably around 30. And then there was a few years of having kids and working a couple jobs, and I had a computer business, and I was enjoying that, but it was on the side. And as you know, when you do a 9 to 5, and then you put 3-4 hours in on another job in the evening, it begins to wear on you, and you feel like you don't have any time to yourself. So, but the kids grew up, and I got divorced when they were about 5 and 3, which was a big wake-up call for me. And at the same time, the factory job that I had decided to close down again and reallocate assets. And I had a really cool job at it was a corrugated fiberboard factory, because cardboard is cereal boxes, but cardboard boxes aren't actually cardboard boxes, they're corrugated. So there's a little tip for your listeners. But I worked on an 80-inch die cutter, which is basically a giant circle press with bread knives in a all bolted in all around it, and the material would come through, and I would print out it would cut out this elaborate design, and some of them were a chip displayer or a Girl Guide cookie box, or these really cool things where they just kind of folded together and create. And I was also printing in 3 colors. So to operate a press like that, it's always up and down, and so many technical aspects. I really enjoyed it, actually. Until they started to claw back the company again. It was a good dad job. It was a good Mark job. But at the same time, they pulled things back, and I had an opportunity to go back to school again. And I thought, okay, this is the last one, kick at the can. I mean, you've been enough times. Do you really want to go? And I said, why not? And I went back for photonics engineering, which is the study of lasers and light. And it was a 3-year course, and I had to move away from my daughters a little bit and see them a little less to do it. And
so
it was a really interesting.
Sorry, were you having to self-finance all these courses then, or?
No, that last one was, up to that point, I had paid my own way through work. But the last time, because the company closed down, the government had a program to give people, it's called second career. So they would give you a certain amount of money to go back to school. And it was a little bit more grant than loan. Mm-hmm. You could still get loan. And it was a really good program, and it was good to get my skills updated. Even though it seems like I've regressed since going to photonics engineering and lasers and light. I'm now, splitting stone and doing more Neolithic and Neanderthal kind of job. But I really enjoy it. And the only crossover for lasers and stone is that I heard Bobby Watt uses a laser to strip off the pollution.
Oh yes,
on the stones. Yes. On the in
I've
Ottawa.
seen that machine. It's very, very expensive.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Expensive. I had a look at that piece of kit once, and it's thousands.
So that's the part of the story where I end up meeting John, because I finished school and moved back to closer to my daughters, where they've actually moved when I was away at school. So this area that I had to move into was kind of new for me as well. So I moved back to the area where they were, so I could reestablish, having them in my life and on a daily basis, and which was really good. And then, but I had there's no photonics work out here in the little towns above Lake Ontario. So I got a job doing some finish carpentry. And while I was doing some finish carpentry at this house, John was in the backyard building a retaining wall. And I look back now, and it's kind of strange, but it was always strange, because I'd see this. I'm going to say it. He's this old guy, and sometimes he looks a little gristle, and you don't really know how to take him. And he's out there lifting and slugging stones in a way that I've never seen anyone do it. It's usually the bobcat, and there's a couple guys, and there's saws going. Here's John just slugging away, building this wall by himself without a helper. So it always intrigued me. I kind of thought, who is this guy, and why is he doing it that way? Just not in he's doing it wrong. Just why haven't I seen somebody doing this before? So we got to know each other quite well as I was on the back of the deck, sanding ash that had been passed through a machine too quick, and it had all these ripples. So I had to sand them all down. And in the process of that, I got talking to John while he's outside building this wall. And, he was telling me that he was going to California in the winter, and everything that came out of his mouth, I just kind of wanted to know more. I was like, who are you? Like this, but in a almost passive way. Like I didn't really want to know who he was yet. I just the surface is fine right now. And so before he left for California, I gave him a business card. I wasn't working for anybody in particular, and I really didn't know what I was going to do come the next spring. I knew I was going to move on from the house I was working on. So I gave him a business card, and I said, I think you should, if you need a helper in the spring, I think you should give me a call. And he's like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds good. Okay, I'll have a great winter. Talk to you later. And that was it. I didn't know if I'd ever hear from him again. And so in the meantime, he went to California, and I had got a job at a chemical plant. Very dangerous health plants where they make the color batches for plastics plants. So it's all these color bags from Central America that have a picture of a dead fish, a dead tree, and a dead human being, just in case you can't read whatever's printed on there. So it wasn't the best of jobs, but it paid well. And for a dad, I just had to do a dad job. And in the spring, I was working at that job and just about to get laid off, actually, because I was only temp. And I saw that I had a message from John, and the message said, "Give me a call." So I call him up, and I say, he says, "Yeah, I called you a few days ago. I needed a helper for this year, and I couldn't get a hold of you, so I had lined up these two other people. I'm sorry." And I was like, "Well, thanks for thinking of me. And I'm sorry I didn't get that message soon enough. And I guess I'll talk to you some other day." And we hung up the phone, and not a second later, it rung again. And it was John. And he said, "You know what? I think you should come help me finish the doctor's house. I don't have somebody to step in. And I think it would be best if you came and helped me finish. You know the job. And we'll see how it goes." So right there, it fell in the fire, and luckily it got picked up back out of the fire. And I've been working with John ever since. I think within a week he was trying to figure out how he was going to get rid of these other two people.
So you kind of just hit it off immediately.
Yeah. He within the first week, I think he realized that I was a little old school, and when he went to send me to go do something, I actually came back, and it was unusual. Like I remember going for gravel, and I was gone 20 minutes, and I came back, and he looked at me, and there was a truck full of gravel, and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, you sent me for gravel. Here's your gravel." He just kind of shook his head, like he never had somebody come back that quick or something. So just little things like that. I think he appreciated that I wasn't standing there on my phone, or I knew when to be on my phone, or little subtleties like that, I think.
So what job were you working on? Still that kind of same wall that you met him at?
The first job that we started working together.
Yes.
Yes, it was to finish that job. Yeah. And the Canadian winter, I dumped a meter of snow on top of our tarp that laid over top of his material. So that was my job to unbury the material. And I guess from watching me do it, how I did that, I guess he was mildly impressed that I shoveled all that snow and moved it out of the way. And we're starting to give him choices to build the wall.
So you were kind of moving stone for him then?
Yeah, I really wasn't laying any stone. He actually had me making harding a lot, and to get the idea of how the stone fractures and on what lines and what you think you're going to do and what the stone does. And I think he wanted me to get an understanding of what the material was capable of before he let me even, I wasn't even backing his walls at that point. I may have harded a little bit, but mostly it was slugging stone and harding and making harding.
And how did you feel at the end of the first day? That must be quite a kind of, a reflective moment.
Well, it wasn't the first day. I had my first big reflective moment. I don't know how early in the season. It was pretty early. And he had a customer that had a beautiful dump trucks full of beautiful round granite jumped in this parking lot area, but it had to be kind of where he was going to teach a course. And, he preemptively knew that if he didn't get on it, it wasn't going to be beside where he wants to build the wall. And now these students are going to have to move all this stone down there. So he took me in prematurely to get in and move the stone down the hill. So it was a real epiphanal day for me because, you know, I see John laying stone on a wall, but I mean, anyone, you know, you could stand somebody in front of a wall and make it, it's all the other stuff that kind of makes a waller, right? Moving stone and decide all these other decisions that aren't as easily seen, and the work that goes into getting stone to the wall. So he and I, and he's got his Crocs on, and you know, he's got his floppy hat, and I'm, you know, the strong bull that just, you know, wants to show him. So we did wheelbarrow loads, hand loaded wheelbarrows, and two of us did this 300-foot track. And of course, it goes by a forest, and 6 mosquitoes land on you, and you've got your, you know, your hands are locked in. You can't swat a mosquito, or you're going to lose your momentum. And so at the end of that day, I had blisters on my blisters on my blisters. And he nonchalantly kept up to every wheelbarrow I did. And I, you know, it was one of those like, am I going back tomorrow? Like, you know, that hurt. That was stressful. But it was my hardest day, but he did it and he didn't complain at all. So I was like, okay, well, if he can put in a day like that and not, I don't hear a peep out of him, then he's the right guy for me. He's the leader that's in the trenches with you, and that sets him apart.
And can I ask, were you clean shaven at that time, or have you always had a beard?
No, that's the other funny thing. I always had a beard, but the company, that chemical company I was talking about, I was temp, so they didn't have you fit for a real respirator. You had to use, you know, the temporary respirators when you were a temp. So unfortunately, they wanted I could have a goatee, but I couldn't have my beard. And the girlfriend at the time said, she says, I don't want you working there anymore. You know, first all the chemicals, and now they want you to shave your beard. That's it. You know, you can't work there anymore.
I don't like the other guy.
That's right. That clean shaven guy has no place here. Yeah, I've not
quite got to that point yet.
That's probably okay. There's always time, David. You can always make up for lost beard time.
And so how did things progress with the two of you from there?
Well, John is the type of guy who usually has a lot going on. There's always 2 or 3 things in the wind that are really cool for one reason or another. So the first, you know, that first year, even though I was just harding and making harding and not really doing much as far as walling is concerned, other than just learning the pace and the flow. And we got to go do walls in Balsam Lake Provincial Park. There's a bunch of old heritage walls that are there that were built by George Laidlaw, who was a railway tycoon, and he used to own basically the top half of Balsam Lake, which is this really beautiful lake a couple hours from here. And his wife said it didn't feel like Scotland. The short story is, his wife said it didn't feel like Scotland, so he had built this big, beautiful cattle ranch, and he had Mr. Scott, we hear his name was, come and build these 6-foot tall dry stone walls all around the property. And some of them are still there, and it's beautiful. It's awe-inspiring to know that those were built, you know, almost 200 years ago and still there. And the only thing taking them out is a snowplow. Because of how much snow gets dumped up there, there's so much hydraulic pressure that you can see the walls bow in certain spots. But for the most part, they're pretty good and beautiful. So that's May. My first 2 months now, I'm working with Sean Donnelly, John Bland, Kenny Davies, John, the owner. So I'm working with, these guys. It's a perfect introduction to my first couple of months into the trade, is to talk to these guys who were trained under John Scott and of course other instructors at their heritage program. Um, Here I am, much older than they are, but just at the right time, because they're all young and starting up and have a couple years in. So it was really interesting to hear them talk about the stone world and the material and the people and the politics. And so it was nicely timed. In my first couple of months, I get to work with, and now of course they're all superstars in our trade. It's great to see, and they're a great bunch of guys. I can't speak enough about them, and they're doing great things for our trade.
What was it about the work that you were doing that kept you at it? Because not many people kind of respond well to just standing there having to hack away at the stone for hours in end, or it can. Some people would find that boring. Not I don't, and everybody that we know doesn't. But
Yeah.
Not everybody would respond to that.
No, it's true. It's true, and I've worked with other people who you can see right away. I don't want to make harding. I want to put stone in the wall. It's like, well, you got to learn how to crawl before you learn how to walk, before you learn how to run. And there's probably swimming in there too. But and my progression was the other thing. I got to back out John's walls, so you learn a lot about walling um, in a very reverse kind of way when you're backing out somebody's wall, and then they get really comfortable with you, and then you're coming up to 3 stones high, and just kind of pinned, and they know you're going to come back and pin it all properly, and they're making good progress. You're making good progress. You're keeping busy. You're working well. You're on 2 sides of the wall, so there's a good flow. And unfortunately, there's part of my personality that likes monotony. Not in a grind my soul down kind of way, but I could move boxes from warehouse A to warehouse B by hand all day, and I would be satisfied when warehouse B has all the boxes. Like, there's part of me that uh, finds value in that, and I know that's not everybody, and I know it sounds kind of factory like, but when you're outside and you know you as you walk past that stone pile, you're constantly taking an inventory. And when you start to train that part of yourself subconsciously, as you're walking past, and you realize, and then when you're on the wall, you go, oh, you know what, I know one. I know I have a stone over here. So I liked how, even though there were monotonous parts sometimes, it was all kind of it all fed itself. It all had this beautiful circle that for every monotonous part, there's this thrilling, you know, the thrilling sound of when you first start to hit the chisel properly. And, your boss even kind of lifts his head and looks over, and, you know, you both heard it. It's that, that sound, it's that clunk, right? And the other one is when you take a stone and put it into the wall, and you hear that clink, like 4 spots touch that stone on the bottom, and it's a satisfaction of somehow subconsciously you knew that was going to sit well in there from all the time you've spent guessing and not having the right stone in your hand, and having to develop your art, I guess, or your craft. And I enjoy that. Um, I'm fortunate enough to have plenty of really cool projects, so that I'm constantly learning, whether or not I'm just moving stone and I get to watch what's going on, or I don't need to be in the star making all the decisions, or I'm happy just to be a part of the small community that puts something up and is admired by others.
So moving on from there, have you know, perhaps describe some of the projects that you've been involved in?
Um,
You know, has it all been kind of utilitarian, kind of agricultural walls, or I know that John does lots of. I'm sorry, my camera keeps falling here. You know, sort of lots of creative projects. What, so maybe describe some of the or maybe even the first project that you went on to that was a kind of really creative one, which you kind of really, you know, got a lot out of for yourself. You know, you
uh,
thought this is more than just kind of uh, a basic process here. There's something very kind of exciting going on here.
yeah, well, that happens a lot with John for several reasons. First of all, he's gone when there isn't a pandemic on. He's in Austria, or he travels. So there's times where I am the company in Canada at times, and it was one time early in um, our time together where he had to go for 2 weeks, and we had already started this wall, and it was kind of, there was other walls on the property, and this was just a 50-foot extension in the one direction. So I had lots of example of what it already should look like, and the material we have is really wonderful to work with, is dolomite limestone, and beautiful country road, and farm in the distance, and a stream to swim in if I get too hot. So he took off for, I can't remember where. It was either Marinakis or um, Austria, one of the two. And he said, "Well, have at it. You know, there's do what you think you should do." And I think that week or 2 weeks was the most interesting learning experience I've ever had in walling, because we had already went up to the first lift. We put our through stones in. So basically I had from on top of the throughs to whenever he got back. And that's a nice section to work because it's off the ground. You're not hunched over all day. It's so I learned very quickly that I was painting myself in the corners, um, doing this and doing that, and things I shouldn't be doing, having a lot of downward slanted stones. I thought I had a good week, and I actually, it went well, other than the few things I realized I shouldn't do to myself. I shouldn't paint myself in the corners. It's so simple to just take a few little precautions, and make sure you're not hurting yourself later on, because wedge stones don't come from parallel planed bedded material, and it's hard to correct some mistakes after a while, especially after a few courses. So I knew it was funny, because John came back, and it was a frustrating week because he had to kind of undo some of my forward leaning stuff. He had to build on that. So they had to have fat faces and retreating backs. And um, so I learned so much that week from working by myself, and painting myself in the corners, and then having, my partner come back from being away and having to build on my whatever I had put up, and see the challenges in that. And he was great about it. I didn't hear, he actually said to me, you kind of shocked me. I didn't expect that you'd get this much done. It was ballsy, I think, and I thought, well, you said to do it, and I had the material, and this is paradise. Why wouldn't I do it? So uh, that was, I got to realize how many levels there are, I think, on the job, whereas he was just giving me a few to deal with at the time. And you know, when you're the only one on the job site, you have to know all the levels, or it gets very, very ugly.
There's so many subtleties to it, and that only comes through time and experience.
That's right. So I'm glad he gave me that time and experience, because I think everything shouldn't be learned with somebody hanging over your shoulder. I don't think that's necessarily the way to learn everything either. I think he realizes that me making little mistakes is good for me, and he doesn't need to be standing there for every one of my mistakes for me to learn lessons. just really good. He treats me. He's the only boss I've ever had that treats my creative input as valid, or he seeks it out for collaboration and just ideas when we're working. And I think it says a lot about him, and it does a world of good for my confidence working with stone. You know, it only takes so little to shatter your confidence, but if you're constantly have a boss who's propping you up and making you feel valid and worthy, it's a treat, and I enjoy it.
I think John's very generous like that. You know, to encourage, he's encouraged so many people, and obviously yourself. You know, that's a
Yeah,
great thing. Yeah,
he's and I think
I'm
he
not so sure whether
realized.
I'd be quite so generous.
Me either. Me either. I tell you. What? Why are you talking? Yeah, you don't have a speaking part in this act. But I think he realized that all ideas are valid, and it does him more positive to hear them and to even incorporate them, because I think it helps his creativity flow, and it helps him not miss any opportunity. He's all too willing to talk to anyone about stone and ideas, and as you know, as you're one of his peers, and he enjoys your talks and conversations, as well as people like Sean Adcock and Eric Landman, and the list goes on and on.
Your own progression then was just kind of, did you start sort of taking more and more, responsibility for some of the walling as you moved forward from there?
Yeah.
Or sort of
Eventually,
sharing the workload?
yeah, and I think eventually I started building the wall, and getting some feedback and input, and working alongside other masons, and um, eventually my confidence helped me start laying more stone, and so I started doing work for um, the same contractor. When I met John, we were working kind of for the same contractor, so I was working at that contractor's house doing work, and we found a bunch of barn foundation in the forest. But before that, he had this huge pile behind a mill, and I mean, I was young and dumb, and I didn't know, how to build a wall right, but I tried, and I had all these soccer balls and cantaloupes and tennis balls, as many as I wanted, and because the guy I was working for didn't want to get a load of stone in or anything, so I started doing this riverbank, and which probably is not a good idea to ever mix water and stonework and not know what you're doing, but it was a lot of fun, and I moved a lot of stone, and I built this a pretty nice river bank, with round stones. But as I said, I was harding with tennis balls, and that's problematic, and you really need harding to make those things stay together. It's like building, what would happen if you build this with soccer balls? It wouldn't stay up very long, I don't think.
You got
So
marbles behind.
exactly. So I gave this guy a little bit of a rate reduction, and it was experimental with what I was doing, and I did as much as I could, and I started getting harding in, and I started doing it better, and I went back and I redid some sections that I thought needed it, and so that led to me doing a bridge workshop with John there, um, which was wonderful. And I got to do all the prep work, and as part of every aspect of it all. And that was actually our first bridge. I had worked for John maybe 3 years, and we hadn't done a bridge yet. So I think it was a drought, and then I think we had 3 the first year. So when you start doing other really cool things, your confidence just I like to play it safe. I like to I'd rather not put up a bunch of stone and have somebody pick it apart, or I'd rather watch what they're doing, and feed the beast, and like get the material moving, and then if I have time, I could you know toy with that idea. I play it safe, but as you start um, having more confidence, you begin to, I really want to lay in a section today. Like it's not even about the other people or the wall anymore. You just want to prove to yourself that I've watched these guys long, and I know I can put 6 stones in and heart them well. And I've been hearting other people's work for a while now. I know I can at least do that. So the other thing was, the first year, I said that the first spring I was working with up at Balsam Lake with the guys, Bland and Kenny and Sean Donnelly. But at the end of that year, the first winter, we went to Peters, and it was the first build for the tower.
Okay. So this is the
So
stone zone across at Galala.
yes.
Yeah.
So that
In
was
California.
basically,
yeah.
This is my 9 month into stonework.
That's a nice kind of little gig to get quite early in your
and
your
it was
relationship.
epic. It was epic because the first build of the tower, there were 25 masons there, all wanting to just eager to get going. And Peter had all this granite, and there was a loose plan. We were waiting for it's the greatest story because we were waiting for lime, and because of the wait for lime, all these features were developed into the lower sections of the tower. So it was this great time of, I had never even worked granite before. I don't even think I had a hammer and chisel up until that point. And here we are, 25 of us now on Peter's pad at the top, all kind of on the outer reaches out of the mud, passing around templates to make all these retreating kind of voussoir shapes for the 3 first layers of the tower that are going to be mortared. So first of all, just working with granite, and now I'm out of my element. But there's a piece and there's some tools, and you're going to do it. Everybody else is doing it, so it was great. And how epic the tower is to be there for that.
That'd be a great experience. How long were you there for that first trip?
3 weeks, I think, 3.5 maybe.
That'd be quite a sort of camaraderie ship between everybody.
Oh, and then I'm meeting now industry giants right now. I'm meeting Matt Driscoll and Julian Carmelo, and all these really awesome masons that Kyle Schlagenhoff and Tomas was there, and it's just so amazing just to even not just working, just wandering around and watching Matt Driscoll hammer out something, and Julian and the interaction there, and it was incredible to it was amazing. I can't for anyone who wants to move forward in stonework, as I think you need to be around like-minded people. And you don't even have to be building, even just to witness something or to be part of it in a physical sense, to watch something happen. I think you become part of that community, even whether you're not swinging a hammer or not. And it's an enjoyable, it's like a drug. You like being around like-minded people because you don't have to explain yourself as often, or, there's these, as Storm Tribe are some amazing people, and we're all very passionate about stonework, it seems.
And it's just such a positive kind of endeavor, isn't it? It's just, getting a lump of rock and then turning it into something. It's just so positive.
Yeah, and we like to do that. We like to take things that nobody else wants. We like to take the crap of the crap and make things out of it. And sometimes it works really well. And it was just leftover stone. Some of the things, one of the things at the Stone Zone, in fact, took us the least amount of time, and it was leftover stone. And I think everyone that walked the property in our industry, it's one of their favorite things.
Which work is that then? Tell me which work.
It's the one by the road behind John's wing wall, kind of on the other side of the bottom of the tower side. There's like a semicircle of stone. It used to be between two trees, and now
Oh
it's
yes, yes.
between two basalt columns, and it's almost like an Irish kind of one thick.
Yeah,
And
that was one of the pieces that really impressed me. That in between the trees, so they've rebuilt that, have they?
yeah, we were having trouble with one of the trees was swaying, so it was plopping out a couple stones every couple of
Yeah,
months.
there was a couple of popped out when I saw it, but
Yeah,
yeah,
so
I was very impressed with that piece because it was like it's still stonework, it's kind of related to walling, but it's something totally different, and it's just that creative spark to think right. What are we going to do with this pile?
yeah,
It's not gonna make a great wall, you know. Um, well, let's stick it between those two trees. It's just that creative spark which I thought was just magical, and he sort of used the same sort of technique to weave a wall in between the some of the trees. Another part that I saw
yes,
again,
right
I think,
across the road.
yeah, I think that was probably my favorite piece. Again, really unusual material, but used in just such a creative kind of manner, and it just looks magical. Very.
Yeah, and the other thing is that you if you looked at that stone, they're like peach pits. I mean, what can you build with peach pits? All right, like if somebody sent you a pallet of that, you'd be like, no, this is the
You've
wrong
sent me the wrong
address.
stuff, but there is an added advantage. There's no hearting.
Yeah, yeah. There's no hearting necessary. They hold each other up.
Yeah. How long did that sort of say the piece that weaves in between the wall? How the trees? How long did that take?
Well, I think it was about 4 days, maybe. Yeah, I think there was maybe 3, 4 masons on that, and I think the front pieces we ended up switching them around and digging them a little deeper at the end. Um, but yeah, overall, that didn't really take that long either. It was that was when they were starting the tower. That all happened in the first year.
Right. Okay. And was
So
that John's idea, or was that a kind of consensus? Kind of, what can we all do with this? Was that kind of everybody kind of throwing their ideas into the pot, and that's what
well,
resulted?
it's kind of that way, and he's been to Ireland enough to know that when you have um, stone that looked like peach pits, there's only so much you can do, right? So I think the material told him what he needed to do, and then I think it was just when you're at Peters, it's oh, this area is now open for development, and I think it was just yeah. He had some boulders that had nice shapes and were cut in half that could be nice bookends, and like I said, that was all the primo material, which we thought was primo material used in the Irish wall, we'll call it. And then the leftovers were used on the test wall, the one that was plopping out stones. So
Right. The one between the trees.
yeah, that was the leftover nobody wants me pile, and they were big
Yeah.
stones. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's interesting. Even the junk of the junk, you know, as you say, those two projects are pretty nice and pretty interesting and unique.
That's what really impresses me about the Stone Zone is that, and what Peter has initiated there is that providing the space, but also kind of giving the encouragement to just explore and play about with the material. You wouldn't do that on site, really. You would have to come with a more precise idea, but just
Yeah,
having the material, having the space, and just being given that kind of freedom just to explore what you can achieve. That really impressed me. I was blown away by those two pieces because they're
yeah,
so kind of unconventional.
yeah. And I mean, Peter is a wonderful. He is the definition of patron. if there was one. He is definitely a patron of the arts, and especially stone and tile and other things that he's interested in.
Yeah. I'm not
Um,
sure how you view him, but I view him as probably the most important character in the stone world just now.
I think you're right about that, and I am lucky to have developed a relationship with Peter um, over the last 7 or 8 years, and really got to admire him and for what he's doing and the vision and the consistency. He's not wishy-washy or flip-floppy about it. It's game on all the time with him. He's always in stone search mode, and he loves shopping for stone and doing interesting things.
I
um
mean, the legacy that he's built there will last generations, I think, and inspire generations to come. Because even if people don't get there, I'm you've obviously been lucky to work there, and I've been lucky to at least have Peter walk me around and see the work that's being done. But those photographs are going to inspire so many sort of people who to explore what they can do with stone. I think that's really, really, an important thing that he's initiated there.
hmm and it's there's two things that come to mind for that point. Is one thing is that he's very inspired by Art City, Paul Linhart,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he would equate to 25% of his love for stone to Paul and the people down at Art City, and the opportunity that he is giving people and inspiring people, and the work there, the inspiration just from doing a little circle in that yard is beyond words. I mean, the ideas just flood your brain, and you're like, wow, this, and it doesn't even have to be finished work, just the types of stone in that yard. Yeah.
We arrived in Ventura on a sort of Friday evening, and the sun was just going down, and it was just like all your dreams come true. You
Oh,
know, arriving at the coast in California, and then so we had a quick walk around on the Friday night, and then Paul took us around on the Saturday morning, and just seeing all the different colours and textures and forms, and it was just stunning. And I think those it's kind of really interesting that you should draw the sort of the connection between those two, because I think that kind of creative hub and then the space to as a patron to pick up on that's really, really important. I saw one of Paul's pieces, which is something that is it's within my report. There's a photograph of it's kind of like two pieces of stone that he's put together.
oh,
And
yeah, like the
he's
sun goddess or something
yeah,
like that.
and he's
Yeah.
slightly carved bits, and he's
Oh,
left other pieces just
oh, yeah.
sort of natural. And I saw that at Art City, and I just fell in love with that piece. And then he told me he was going to the Stone Zone, and I just thought, if I won the lottery, that's the piece I would buy. Whether Peter would part with it, of course, but I'd need to
Yeah,
win a lot of
yeah,
money. I think that's a world class piece. I don't think I've seen anything, you know, as stunning as that. And I think
yeah,
again, I feel very lucky to have seen that kind of before it went on site. And
yeah. And it's onyx, right? I believe.
I, I think it's something like that. I mean, I would
Yeah,
need to check, but
it's
it's
just
just
incredible.
it is an
I agree.
incredible piece. Yeah. So
So
have you seen that piece cited? Because I believe Peter had
yeah,
a
yeah.
sort of
It's
special
it's
corner for that.
yeah, it's sitting in the corner of his pad overlooking the tower. So it's kind of on the highest point of the pad, right on the corner, and it's sitting on a beautiful black granite table um, that he had brought in for it. So it's sitting up high, and yeah, it's beautiful. It's
Yeah, if you've
gorgeous.
got a picture, I'd love to see that in sight.
Yeah, I will send that to you for sure. And the other thing about Peter, and we were talking about his ability to um, be in the know, is that another one of his influences, and someone that Peter appreciates and honors, is Millard Sheets.
Okay,
And
I don't
if
know him.
Millard Sheets is a contemporary artist from California, and long story short, he he was, before Chase took over. I think it's West Coast Savings or something like that. West Coast Savings used to be a juggernaut on the West Coast in banking. And the story goes, and I only know this because of Peter. Story goes is that the owner, the rich businessman, calls in Millard Sheets for a meeting and says, "I want to build something new and fresh in the banking world, and I don't know what I want. I mean, that's your job. I'll be fair with you, you be fair with me, but I want you to build me a bank." So Millard Sheets proceeds to build this bank, and it's more like an art gallery than it is a bank. People are blown away by it, and it's not this stodgy, unwelcoming place. It's bright, and there's artwork, and I guess it paid for itself. I think within the first year on new deposits. It was phenomenal, and
So
you
how do
know,
you spell that? Sorry, Mark.
his name is Millard Sheets, Millard, I think, Sheets. So the legacy is Millard Sheets then basically in all these West Coast, I think that's the name, West Coast Savings, um, all these art pieces and mosaics are happen to be in all these banks that are now, I think, owned by Chase after the big, I guess the company got bought up by Chase. But in all these banks, there's this beautiful artwork. So how I relate that is Peter knows the story well, and he is the businessman who is allowing artists to come to his property, and he doesn't want to have a say. He doesn't necessarily, and he doesn't want to tell you what to do, or he just wants you to have that freedom and that that opportunity that's so many of us never get to have. And to have somebody say, here's a place, here's the material, here's a place to stay, I'm going to feed you, you just do your thing and I'll take care of the rest.
And I've kind of always kind of appreciated, I've been doing this for kind of 30 years, and public art was kind of maybe just coming into Scotland as a kind of, a field of practice for about 10 years before I came. I started practicing. So in some ways, that's 40 years. It is still quite young, so the society is still kind of learning of how to employ it and what it's worth. But it's amazing to hear from the story that you've just related that it can be done and it can actually really benefit both parties. That's ultimately where we'd like. I kind of hope that society gets to, and ultimately because of my love of stone and passion for it and for the craft, I hope that other people come along and are able to kind of build upon that kind of the sort of things that people like myself and John and some of the creative practitioners who are looking at art, looking at stone alongside the creative arts. I just hope they get the opportunity to kind of explore their kind of creativity with the material. And I think the wider society will benefit for that. That our kind of public spaces are kind of barren of interest and soul that's kind of really missing. And I think people are missing that, and we're kind of failing somewhere along the line if we don't kind of try to do more with it.
Yeah, and there's great people leading the charge, with that and trying to bring stone into public places, and there's people that see the worth in it, and there's people that don't, and I think social media is doing two things. It's showing us that the stonework's always been here. There's 2,000 years of it behind us already, at least. Just that we could talk about in a few days. But the other thing is that it's inspiring people, because we can't live all in the same village and we all can't see the same things. It's really nice to see what's been done and then see what's been going on, and we're all starting to influence each other a little bit, whether it's subconsciously or much like how music and art has influenced more music and art in the past, and it's good to see. I'm not shocked by the amount of stonework I see online now. I just try to remind myself it's always been there. This just hasn't been in pictures on the internet yet.
And there's some great work being done there out there,
It's
some really top quality stuff.
Yeah, amazing.
It kind of it's almost like there's sometimes I see it look on Facebook and a guy's doing some really great work and you've never even heard his name before.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, and that's happening a lot lately,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it is.
Dozens
And
of people.
so you've obviously worked with John, at his right hand, right shoulder for the last few years, and one of the things I really am impressed with John is that he's kind of bringing creativity and art more into his work, which is something I really respond to. So is that something you've kind of? What's your ambitions for taking on your own skills and exploring your own creativity? Is that something that's within you, or maybe that's not in your view? Has that
No,
inspired you?
I'm developing um, my own aesthetic, and I'm lucky enough to get to work with John, where he's kind of the extreme uh, in aesthetics in a way, and he likes to do things, what he's doing, and he likes to do things um, um, without making it look tailored, and it's he just wants to get it up sometimes, and just to see the form and the function of actually building something to that scale, so his motives change with every project, but he is very consistent in the sense that he's not overly absorbed with aesthetics, in the sense that he's not trying to um, make it for everyone, or it may not be for everyone, because people like tailored stonework. Some people like it more than I call it organic. He likes to be a little more organic, and whereas, as you can get as you could really you could really get contemporary with stone now, and make it look very tailored and polished, but I think he likes to tend to, when he's done, he likes it to look 100 years old, or a couple hundred years old, and without a lot of fresh faces, or um, so I'm developing my from hanging around him all the time, and I get to collaborate with uh, John and Sean Adcock quite a bit. So my ideas are heard and listened to, and sometimes they actually take. And all of a sudden, we're doing something because Mark suggested it, and it's empowering. And the more opportunity you have to share ideas and your input and your person into something, you become to get comfortable and want to do it again. And so now I am designing a little bit, whereas before maybe I was a little bit more on the pragmatic side, and I now, from hanging around John 7 years, he's fired my creative um, the creativeness inside of me, and honed it, and made it so it's not this. I'm allowed to have an idea, and it doesn't mean it's a good idea. It's just I'm allowed to express it.
I think it would be
So
difficult being around a creative person and not being inspired to think about that yourself. But perhaps, again, like you said, John's kind of right up there in terms of creativity. Perhaps that's quite intimidating, um, to put forward
it,
your ideas.
in some ways it is, but he uh, it it's not really tough living in his shadow. There's not there's not enough time to feel sorry for yourself living in his shadow. Um, and he's always very, he's always telling people how he appreciates me and how much I'm a part of of, of what's going on. And so there's never any, there's always kind words and appreciation coming from him. So I'm just blessed, and I know I am. And I don't like using the word lucky, because lucky um, makes it sound cheap and like I didn't work hard for where I'm very fortunate, um, but I'm not lucky. I don't think. I think that I'm just going to get more creative and try to express some of my own creative ideas and designs. But I'm so busy helping John with some of his, and I'm a big part of his designs as well. So even though it is his conception, for it to, when it finally becomes a physical form, I've helped so much along the way that it's just kind of training, I think, for when I want to maybe bring some of my big ideas into the world or into public space. Or um,
Have you been creative in the past? Do you paint, draw? Has creativity been any part of your life before? When you were sitting in the doodling in the chemical plant, or is
yeah,
or is this kind of set you on a different path, a new path?
I think I was always creative, um, and I like to draw. And yeah, I used to draw when I was younger, for sure. And I think um, now I'm getting back into drawing, and I want to hone that skill. Whereas before, I didn't really use it as a skill. It was just more of maybe some entertainment for myself. But now um, I'm able to, if I can't express it in words, I draw pictures. I'm making clay models. I think when John did his webcast here, he showed off the clay model that I was doing, because I couldn't draw it and I needed some scale. So I went and bought all this clay, and I made this big clay model in the middle of my coffee table for a couple of weeks. And it was fun. And I was able to express myself without words. And so that was kind of cool and neat. And, allows me to realize that I have maybe some more potential in making clay models.
Well, one of the things that might be quite interesting to hear your views on is that there is this kind of debate around craft and art and how they should interact. And in some ways you've worked alongside John, who is kind of pushing the boundaries of what stone is. What's your own kind of feelings, hearing from John, discussing things from John, but also kind of hearing it from the other side, from say the internet, or from some of the other people that you've worked with? What's your kind of feelings around that?
As far as the art form of of
Yeah,
stonework,
or that kind of balance between craft, which is it sort of very dedicated towards technique, or art, which is more about kind of expression and aesthetics.
um, well, I think there has to be a balance between um, structure and um, the end aesthetic. Um, you know, Thea Alvin makes these beautiful spirals, and they're very, they're not battened down. Like if there was a heavy earthquake, they might come down. But I would never say to her not to build them, because they're some of the most beautiful pieces of stone art work that I've seen, right? These beautiful spirals that touch down and keep going, they're not very structural in the sense that they're not built to last forever, but they're beautiful and wonderful. And I would be sad if we weren't building things that perhaps weren't the safest or um, the most structural things. It's not all about lasting forever. Sometimes it's whimsical, and sometimes, as you know, we play, and sometimes play crosses over into our design and our everyday work, and sometimes we just kind of say, look back, sometimes now I know who I'm dealing with, so all I have to do is say, John, take a step back here for a second, and just, are we missing an opportunity here? Should there be a niche here that we didn't design in, and the customer's fine with, but we just didn't think of it because we just, heads down building a wall? Like, we have the material. Can we do something special here? So I'm starting to adapt more artistic ways into our regular, a retaining wall just doesn't have to be a retaining wall. A retaining wall can be this beautiful retaining wall with a niche that has a purpose or has some kind of artistic design in it. So
the way I see it is every wall is an opportunity.
Yes. And I think every time you're working with stone is an opportunity to step outside of,
yeah, exactly. And what can we
regular.
do here? And that's always kind of what it's the work I respond to the most, and it's always, if a client has come to me, if they've said they want a wall, I says, well, if you want a basic wall, that there are probably people that are going to do it much better than myself. But if you want something different, I'm your man. Because that's the kind of way I look at things. And so you've obviously got ambitions to continue on then.
Yeah,
and progressing.
I enjoy the fact that I am blessed with some clientele, some that I share with other artists and other wallers. Because as you know, it's not just the projects; it's the people who pay the bill or enable us or donate something to us, or however big or little it is. It's the people that are driving us to be able to do something creative, and the trust that that something like a catalog of your work, people can see that they just need to trust you, and whatever, I don't know how many times I've come on site where the customer's like, oh, whatever you think, John, like, and I'm just like, if I was just here, it'd be like, well, Mark, we have these ideas and we want them, met, and I would be okay with that because that's comes with my age. Maybe, well, now I'm a little older, I might be able to get away with it with the gray in my beard, but he gets carte blanche a lot of times with just regular everyday projects too, right? And so I think more art is better, and I think if it's simpler, simple things, just to and it's not necessarily about art, but it's about expression, right? You could express yourself very easily in the stone world. There's lots of opportunity to inject some personality into your wall, or I know it's a funny little thing that Kenny Davies likes to put these little round stones, and the guys make fun of him for it, and it's his little devil on the shoulder, likes to, and it blends in and looks great after, but it's not necessarily what every guy would do, but it has a little bit of flair, personality. It looks good.
But it's really interesting you should say personality, because that's exactly what I think. Even on a a field wall, if you walk about a field wall from one field to the next, or a different farm to the next, they'll be different, because the guys have it's the opportunity to express your personality, and there's so many opportunities to do that. Probably coming near the end now. That's what's been kind of running for about an hour and a half. So what's the kind of the initial future for you? You're just kind of quite content just standing, being John's right hand man at the moment? And
yeah, I have no hurry to alleviate myself from that position. I hope he continues to come to work in some kind of capacity. You know, he's turning 73 on Saturday, and you know, he's as healthy as I am. He does the same amount of work I do day in and day out. So, but you know, his knees are a little tired, we'll call it, and you know, he's working on that. And but yeah, there's no stopping him. I mean, he says he says things, and what he does are two different things. And he, you know, now we're building the next prototype of the Cocoon project, so we can learn. It's not even about aesthetics or money or anything. We're just trying to learn what shapes, you know, are needed to build something, and to have it at least safe enough to build it, and to enjoy it for a little while after. It doesn't have to stay up forever. But so we've got some really great stone, and we're starting to build on his daughter's farm. So that's fun. He's excited about that. And
yeah, I look forward to seeing how that progresses.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's
I must admit, when you talk about his age, when I came, you know, he is an inspiration for me, because when there was a couple of people that I met along the way, you know, obviously you know, John and Thomas, because when I came across for the Winston Churchill travels, I was 55 at that time, and I was beginning to think, you know, you're almost over the hill. But meeting John and Thomas and seeing them still working at a really high level, at, you know, much older than me, I came back with a kind of renewed kind of energy to, oh, well, I can still be doing this for quite a while now.
yeah, the inspiration, right? And Toru
Yeah,
is another
exactly.
one, right? I'm like, I love Toru's posts, because he's still out there working
Yeah, still
hard
out there,
every
working hard.
day,
Yeah,
you
still
know,
producing really great work.
and it doesn't necessarily even have to be work that he likes. He's not ashamed of it. I
No,
need to pay the bills,
yep,
so I'm
yeah,
working,
yeah.
and it's
There's no
great.
pension plan for me, so that'll be
No,
good.
no. So I draw some power in that too. I mean, I started relatively late to the trade. You know, 43, 44. But I got some good. I have some good company. You know, Norman was a food scientist until he became a waller in his 40s. I think John is the same way. I think he was just in his early 40s when he started with the masonry, which led him to dry stone. But I always joke that I'm glad I didn't start when I was 18, because I'd be done by now. I'd be like, I'm done. I got 10 more years and I'm out, right? Like I think these lifelong masons have just beaten down their bodies for years. You know, some of their glory days. You know, I'm glad I didn't start till I was 40. I might actually make it to 70 now.
Yeah, I see. It doesn't keep you fit; it wears you out.
Yeah, you only have a limited expiry, you know.
Yeah.
You got to use it well.
Well, that's been a great chat today, Mark, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how you can continue on your career, and I kind of hope you find your own creativity and get your own opportunities, and I'm sure you'll do some great work in the future. So I've probably taken up for lots of your time, so I'm really thankful for the
rainy
chat
day today.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
So you're hiding?
Yeah, that's right.
I just strap on the waterproofs and get out there.
I'm going.
Right, okay. Well, great to speak to you today, Mark.
Okay, great. Thanks for the talk, David.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye.